Well, now we got to another icon of the structure C engine, which squeezes out a fabulous amount of horsepower. What car do you think this engine was first installed on? The same wife in the back. But no. This business sedan with sporting riddles gives an arrest. It happened during the collapse of the USSR when the legendary Hunard Sokolov entered the world market. Itachi round Ukulina, it is the sound of this song, and 20 from the budget, and at high revs just a liter in line excites the blood. The 6 was produced along with its motor brother. One from behind, and they were his follower. As some are confused, the main difference between them was revealed in the volume and height of the cylinder block. The coolness of the old school, so that the motors are, of course, in the strongest cast iron block that can hold hellish loads. The presence in the budget and 2 turbines of the network of 20 career interviews and 24 valves of the head made it possible even in those days to remove 280 villages from the plant, and the export versions of the engine were worth in the back. For example, for the American market with prices, cudgels, shafts and farce. The bags were already giving out 320 forces and more than the moment of 280. The powerful sinkhole apparatus covered a quarter of a mile in 13.78 of a second. Well, it was nothing compared to what this motor could be turned into by tuning it properly. To the gas station. Relatively light artillery. Money from the firm in May. Actually, there is nothing special about it. Comrades from Molly applied a new exhaust system and a development management system for their own production. The would-be standard turbine was increased, and from here the engineers received an additional 120 horsepower. Recoil now began to reach. There were also developments in suspension and brakes, and the exterior was transformed by 17 without. The noticeably increased power has affected the dynamics. This car began to fly at 0 as much as 0.7 of a second faster as 13.9 of a second. And now we meet already heavy artillery. The spice of the Japanese office replenishment the site entered in the mid-90s, people from this company made the Kirkorov simply terrible to the sun out of the council, bringing the inline 6 to perfection for 20 years, received new pistons, other feuds. 2 goals, new brains and of course turbines. 2 large snails. 6. 18 do generate a pressure of 1.7. And how much do you think the motor blossomed after that? Pause and write them in the comments. Your guess how much power this monster began to develop? He began to develop a lot. And 682 horsepower is a crazy figure, considering that the king of Kirkos of those years had only 1 in quotes. Of course 627 sat down, and his engine is not some sort of, but you. 12 madness, and once again madness matched. The recoil was aggressive and at the same time devilishly attractive. The trim was the site Vanyushin turned the spice into a real style icon. It is not without reason that many exhibits hunt for the subject today. Not without intervention in the brakes, the suspension, and 18 diameter rims adorned the excellent appearance. I rode the brainchild too, was not afraid of a child. The hitch had to be caught by the rear ones before, but when it somehow managed to be done, the wife managed to fly a quarter of a mile in 12.3 of a kilometer from a standstill in 21.55. For example, such a chariot can drive around 560 strong 510 out of 2012 years in a pawn shop with a strong engine. In the 90s, she was definitely not afraid of the models of the Devil and almost all models of the Ether of Aria. Unfortunately, the result is 100 and 200. I can't tell you this legendary car. Well, but here in front of you the spices of a similar configuration from the 90s, from an unknown office with a capacity of 700 horsepower. Let's look at the results of this little beast. What we have? Wild letters at the start of 4.9 of a second to 100, and very quickly for the time 12.43 of a second in an apartment. However, today these figures are not particularly surprising. However, just look at the result of 100, 200, and 6.99 of this figure is already really breathtaking. If we also take into account that this group's car was captured by Key, if you believe this table, Then such a spice did 100 and 200 at the level of a Mercedes 722 with an engine of 650 horses, released in the Card S, and was not much slower, the legendary final for which in 2000 a year bore the title of the fastest in February. The Spice's contemporaries are a model of 50, 100, 200 in 8 seconds. So much for your strength. 20 for the budget, and but, as it turned out, even such insane power is for 20 for this residence and just seats. Its safety margin is so great that back in the second half of the 90s, the company on this site created another miracle, installed an even larger turbine on this engine, to which the version is 680. Two forces of a different internet MLR descent, the farce of the bag worked on the head of the block, firewood and much more. The result is a mind-boggling 1,300 forces of the 6 cylinders of the new engine. The total will hit a quarter mile with a score of 9 seconds with a ponytail. Oh, those 90s! Another monster from our time has also received new crankshaft, pistons, rascals, striped shafts, head, exhaust manifold and much more, includes turbines. You can see for yourself what size. Well, further on, part of the tail is a cast iron block capable of withstanding a recoil of 2,000 horsepower. 2,000 horsepower on the road with a tire taught the tail to be imported to the Spice in the truest sense of the word. Acceleration to 97 km per hour. The place began to take 1/300ths of a second of acceleration from 97 to km per hour, and, I have to believe, it began to be measured in 1/6300ths of a second 100-200. Even faster, I think, such acceleration and feeling, and it is clear that this is a different car. But this does not change how cool they have learned to rent this motor now. The legend, and on behalf of my channel of honor, had 20 for this resident, and write in the comments what year your car was produced. If you want to continue the Japanese prison car, I expect your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe.